Amara was an art student living in a bustling city filled with noise, skyscrapers, and endless crowds. Her dream was to become a renowned painter, but lately she felt stuck. The inspiration that once came so easily seemed to have vanished. Amara's small studio apartment, once her haven, now felt like a cage. Canvases lay unfinished, and her brushes were left untouched. One rainy evening, as Amara walked home from her art class, she noticed an old, dimly lit shop at the end of a narrow alley. She had never seen it before. The sign above the door read, "Wonders of Time." Curious, she stepped inside. The shop was filled with peculiar antiques, watches, globes, paintings, and strange objects she couldn't even name. Behind the counter stood an elderly man with a kind smile. "Welcome," he said, his voice warm and inviting. "Looking for something special?" Amara hesitated. "I'm not sure. I've lost my inspiration. I'm an artist, but I feel like I can't create anymore." The man nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps what you need is a different perspective." He reached under the counter and brought out an old leather-bound sketchbook. The cover was worn and the edges were frayed, but something about it drew Amara in. "This sketchbook is not ordinary," the man said. "It has a way of showing its owner what they truly need to see." Amara raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Take it," he said, handing her the book. "Draw in it, you'll see." Amara wasn't sure why, but she took the sketchbook home. That night, she sat at her desk, opened the book, and began to draw. She sketched a simple tree, but as soon as she finished, the lines on the page began to glow. The tree she had drawn seemed to come alive, its branches swaying gently as if moved by a breeze. Amara gasped and dropped her pencil. The next thing she knew, she was no longer in her apartment. She was standing in a vast meadow under a bright blue sky. The tree she had drawn stood before her, its leaves shimmering with golden light. She touched the bark, and it felt real. Amara looked around in awe. The meadow stretched endlessly, filled with flowers she had never seen before. She realized she was inside the world she had drawn. A voice behind her startled her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Amara turned to see a young man dressed in clothes that seemed from another era. "Who are you?" she asked. "My name is Kale," he said with a friendly smile. "You must be the new artist, the one with the sketchbook." "How do you know about the sketchbook?" Amara asked, holding it tightly. Kale chuckled. "It's a magical artifact. It's been passed down through generations, always finding its way to someone who needs it. This world you see is one of many you can create, but beware, the sketchbook doesn't just bring your drawings to life. It also reveals parts of yourself you may not be ready to face." Amara felt a mix of excitement and unease. "What do you mean?" "You'll see," Kyle said. "For now, explore. Let the sketchbook guide you." Over the next few days, Amara used the sketchbook to create more drawings. Each time she was transported into the world she had drawn. She sketched a bustling market filled with colorful stalls, and suddenly she was walking through it, tasting exotic fruits and hearing lively music. She drew a serene beach at sunset and found herself sitting on the warm sand, listening to the waves. With each visit, Amara felt her creativity returning. She began to feel alive again, inspired by the worlds she created. But as Kale had warned, the sketchbook also began to reveal deeper parts of her. One night, she sketched a dark forest without thinking. When she opened her eyes, she was standing among towering trees, their twisted branches blocking out the moonlight. Amara felt a chill run down her spine. The forest was silent, and the air was heavy. As she walked, she saw shadows moving among the trees. Her heart raced. "Hello?" she called out, but there was no answer. Then she saw it, a figure standing in the distance, watching her. It looked like her, but its eyes were cold and distant. Amara realized it was a reflection of herself, the part of her that doubted her abilities and feared failure. The figure spoke, its voice echoing through the forest. "Why do you create when you know you'll never be good enough?" it said. Amara's chest tightened. "That's not true," she said, her voice trembling. The figure stepped closer. "You've failed before. What makes you think this time will be different? Tears welled up in Amara's eyes. She wanted to run, but she forced herself to stand her ground. Because I have to try, she said. Even if I fail, creating is part of who I am. It's how I make sense of the world. The figure stared at her for a moment, then nodded and disappeared. The forest began to brighten, and the heavy feeling lifted. Amara woke up in her apartment, the sketchbook glowing faintly on her desk. From that moment on, Amara's relationship with her art changed. She realized that creating wasn't about perfection. It was about expressing herself and embracing the process. The sketchbook continued to take her on incredible journeys, each one teaching her something new about herself and the world. Months later, Amara held her first art exhibition. The pieces she displayed were inspired by the worlds she had visited through the sketchbook. People marveled at her work, saying her paintings felt alive, as if they could step into them. Amara smiled, knowing that in a way they could. As she packed up after the exhibition, she found herself back in the shop where it all began. The elderly man was waiting for her. "I see the sketchbook served you well," he said. Amara nodded. "It changed my life." The man smiled. "Good. Now it's time for it to find someone new." Amara hesitated but understood. She placed the sketchbook on the counter and walked out of the shop, feeling lighter than she had in years. The door closed behind her, and when she turned to look back, the shop was gone. Amara's journey wasn't over. She continued to paint, her heart full of inspiration and her mind open to endless possibilities. She knew that while the sketchbook was no longer with her, the lessons it taught would stay forever. In the weeks that followed, Amara found herself wondering about the worlds she had created. She felt a deep connection to them, almost as if they were a part of her. One evening, while painting in her studio, she noticed something unusual. Her latest canvas, a vibrant depiction of the meadow she had drawn in the sketchbook, seemed to shimmer faintly. Amara leaned closer and touched the paint. For a brief moment, she felt the warmth of the meadow's sunlight on her skin. Amara realized that even without the sketchbook, the magic had stayed with her. Her art had become a bridge between reality and imagination, a way to share the beauty she had experienced. She began to experiment, painting not just what she had seen, but also what she dreamed of. Each piece seemed to carry a life of its own, captivating everyone who saw it. One day, while visiting a local gallery, Amara overheard a young boy talking to his mother. "Mom, her paintings feel like stories. Can I make stories like that too?" His words struck a chord with Amara. She realized her art wasn't just about expressing herself. It was about inspiring others to create their own worlds. Amara decided to teach art classes for children in her community. She encouraged them to explore their imaginations, just as the sketchbook had encouraged her. The classes became popular, and soon her studio was filled with laughter, color, and creativity. Amara found joy in guiding the next generation of artists, helping them discover their own magic. Years later, Amara opened her own gallery, showcasing not only her work, but also the work of her students. The gallery became a place where stories were told through art, a testament to the power of creativity. And though the sketchbook was long gone, its influence lived on in every brushstroke and every masterpiece created within those walls. Amara often thought about the elderly man in the mysterious shop. She wondered where the sketchbook had gone and who it had chosen next. But she knew one thing for certain. The magic of the sketchbook wasn't just in the pages. It was in the hearts of those who dared to create, to imagine, and to believe in the beauty of their own worlds.